make some
example,
changes. The example that people see from those that ought to lead and set a different example. Some people may recall we're not too far from Meeting Street, and when we look in days gone by at some of the giants who would have led the community, many of them were not terribly wealthy. Many of them were simply hard-working, very bright Bahamians who contributed to the development of the Bahamian people. We have discarded reverence for those types of individuals, and we now put the people on the pedestal, the ones with bling, with plenty of money, fine cars, and the materialism has been embraced by many, many Bahamians. Let me give you an example. And I got permission from this young man who happens to be in the hospital right now. I asked him if I could tell his story. Now, his story, he was walking with a Galaxy S4.
That's a telephone.
Telephone.
Cell phone.
And he says that somebody came up to him and said, "Hey man, let me use your phone." His response is, "I ain't got no minutes." The person allegedly doubled back, leaned out of the car and shot him in the chest, took the S4. Now, he almost died from that. He is admitted in the hospital, ostensibly over a phone. This is Nassau, Bahamas. That's today. Now, do I have any cause to doubt the veracity of this story? Not really. But if you think about it, the idea that life is so cheap that, as in other places, you could die for a pair of tennis shoes, well, in the Bahamas, potentially you could die for a telephone. And so when you look at materialism, when you look at the turf wars that have sprung up, Bahamians ought to understand that we have basically embraced a culture that has destroyed much of what we have gained in the Quiet Revolution. If you think about it, Bahamians came a very long way after 1950, 1960. And we recently celebrated Majority Rule Day. The gains that Bahamians made were phenomenal. Education, economic empowerment. People moved out of the urban areas into nice homes in the valley, out elsewhere, etc. But the message got lost. It was a matter, by whatever means necessary, I can get them things. And so it's no longer an issue of maintaining value, but let me embrace the things. And so the individual who is a hard-working, honest individual no longer commands the respect of the fellas on the block. The guy who's selling the dope commands the respect of the fellas on the block. The guy who may have to ride in a 10 or 15-year-old automobile, but he cares for his family, is a prominent member of his church, is actively involved in civic activity, is not somebody that we look up to now. The fellow who's driving his Mercedes-Benz, BMW, who doesn't work, at least he has no legitimate job, but he flashes $100 bills and will throw out the boys on the block, that's who we look up to. Now, when you take it from the clandestine activity to the white-collar individuals, the fellas who could swing a deal, cut a deal, and get a $5 million hit there, a $1 million hit there, etc., that's who we look up to. And some of those individuals, unfortunately, are leaders of this country. Some of those individuals are leaders of this country. And so when Mr. Monka speaks about gangsterism, I have to agree with him. There are gangsters and pirates among us. Now, obviously, with our libel laws as they are, you're not going to get me to call any names.
No, I
but
don't
I am
want to. I don't
sure,
expect you to.
I am sure that everybody listening to this program right now will nod their head in agreement and said, I don't think he's talking nonsense.
Is there any way out of this, though? I mean, I hear what you're saying. You're absolutely true. I agree with you, and I endorse what you're saying. And I'm happy that you're here because the whole idea is to make sure people understand something once and for all. That we've got a problem. And two, we've got to find some things to start dealing with this problem because too many people are dying needlessly and senselessly in this country. We see the television newscast on nightly reports, and we see the women holding their heads, as Bob Marley once sang, and cry because their sons have been shot down the streets and died. And we're seeing this. And his song, he talked about just because of the system. Now, what we have here is something that's endemic in our country. It's in the fabric of our country, and we don't seem to have the wherewithal, the courage, to try to change some things in a real way. And this thing is deep. It's not just as if this is a group of little kids who are just wayward and they're shooting one another and it's going to burn itself out. The more we say, Dr. Duane Sands, it's going to burn itself out, I'm sure that you're not a believer of that.
Clearly, what happened was we didn't think it was ever going to get this bad because Bahamians do that. We don't shoot each other like that. Okay? In the days before guns were proliferated so much, somebody get chopped, somebody get jucked, not a big deal. Okay? Because they weren't dying as much as they are. But the violence was always there. When I grew up, we used to worry about Okra Hill. We used to worry about
Camp Road.
Camp Road. My Grammy lived right off Camp Road. Okay, my father's mother. And so there were certain places you didn't want to go because they had some bad boys in there. But them bad boys used to chop you with a rock. Or you'd always hear stories about how this person was accosted with a bottle or whatever. Well, now the weapon of choice is a 9mm or an AK or some other automatic weapon. But the anger that has been created in many of the young men who have been spawned, who have been abused by society, that have never been loved, and they act out because nobody really cares about them. Okay, and the only love that they find is from others just like them. So they don't expect to live. They're not afraid to die.
Would you say that we have a criminal society, basically, by and large?
We have created primarily young men, but not only young men and women, who really don't have a whole lot to live for. And we have created a classist society. It used to be that we were united by roots that were common, that we identified with each other because we were from a country and we were all oppressed by the colonialists, right? And then we had this wonderful thing whereby we were unified to gain rights, education, healthcare for all. But then we started to separate on the basis of net worth. So that, quite frankly, I ain't got nothing to do with you. You're a little poor black fella.
It's class.
It's class now, okay? And women get abused, they get used as sexual objects, and children get